Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. I want to talk about the cruelty of anti-discrimination laws because these laws are probably the best example of good intentions that have gone bad, attempting to do the right thing but actually doing the wrong thing in the process. So I came across an article that was maybe 2 to 3 years old, and it was by The Atlantic, titled "When Banning One Kind of Discrimination Results in Another," and says a new paper finds that so-called ban-the-box policies which prevent employers from seeing job applicants' criminal histories has unintended consequences. So it goes like this. The person who wrote the article met a man named Malachi Matheson a few months earlier, and this person, aged 27 at the time, was in business school and committed a crime and went to prison. After serving their time, they tried to look for a job again, and the employer wants to know about their criminal history. So they would explain that, look, I'm a changed person. Yes, I committed a crime. I went to jail. That's not who I am anymore. So I should be considered for the job because the person who I was is not the person who I am. But the employer wants to know more. So long story short, Mr. Matheson told employers, I shot somebody in the back of the head. That was enough to turn off employers from wanting anything to do with Matheson anymore. And he would get rejected over and over again for jobs for that reason. So in an attempt to help convicted criminals, such as Matheson, get a job, state governments have passed laws that say to employers, you're not even allowed to ask about a candidate's criminal history until you are deeper into the hiring process. And President Obama banned the box for federal employment back in 2015. 24 states and Washington, D.C. also enacted policies that prevent employers from asking about criminal history. Of those 24 states, you have 12 that have maximized ban-the-box policies, meaning they prevent both public and private employers from asking about criminal history. All but 3 of the states you see on the screen here are states in the Northeast or West Coast, very progressive states that believe the government should take a bigger role in outlawing and getting rid of discrimination. Now, the reason why ban-the-box policies are cruel is because they hurt the very people they were designed to help. They were designed to help people with criminal records get jobs. But according to the data, they hurt those very people's opportunities to get jobs. Several studies confirm this. One of them produced by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and that study is available for anyone on the web who wants to see it. The title of it is "Does Ban-the-Box Help or Hurt Low-Skilled Workers? Statistical Discrimination and Employment Outcomes When Criminal Histories Are Hidden," published by the National Bureau of Economic Research back in 2016. So what they found in that study is that ban-the-box policies decreased the probability of being employed by 5.1% for young low-skilled black men and 2.9% for young low-skilled Hispanic men. The reason is because when employers cannot access an applicant's criminal history, they instead discriminate more broadly against demographic groups that are more likely to have a criminal record. So in other words, by banning discrimination based on criminal history, which is seen as acceptable by most people, we incentivize discrimination based on race, which is considered unacceptable by most people, because criminal history brings liability to an employer. If they hire someone and that person commits a crime, that employer can actually be held liable in court for hiring somebody recklessly or negligently and not doing due diligence in checking the person out before hiring them. It's called a negligent hiring lawsuit, and I'll talk about what that is in a second. there really is no liability to hiring someone based on their race, because race is not something that can be reasonably used to determine someone's character or someone's actions, but criminal history is. Here's another study by the University of Michigan Law, published in 2016, and the title of it is Ban the Box, Criminal Records and Statistical Discrimination, a Field Experiment. Again, this is located on the web for anyone who wants to check these studies out. What they found in this study is that before Ban the Box policies were put in place, white applicants were called back slightly more than black applicants. But after Ban the policies were established, white applicants were called back 6 times more. So we went from only slightly more callbacks for whites than blacks before Ban the Box to 6 times more callbacks for whites than blacks after Ban the Box was put in place. And the reason, again, is because employers do not want to hire somebody who has a greater chance of committing a criminal offense that results in injury or death, because there is a lawsuit in the name of negligent hiring that could be filed against them. What employers will do is, instead of being able to check out someone's criminal history because they're not allowed to under Ban the Box, they'll just go to the FBI website and then they'll look up crime statistics in the United States, and they'll see something like this, where it says in 2017, 68% of people arrested for crimes were white, 27% were black. 70% of the population is white, 12% are black. So blacks are disproportionately, they're arrested at a disproportionately high rate than whites. But this is really not what scares employers. This is what scares them. When you look at the kinds of crimes they're asked, when you look at the kinds of crimes that they're arrested for, homicide and robbery, 2 crimes that are considered very frightening to people. You look at where it looks at blacks who are arrested for homicide and robbery. 53% of all arrests for homicide in America in 2017 were of blacks. 54% of robbery arrests were of blacks. So even though blacks are only 12% of the population, they make up more than half of the arrests for homicide and robbery. And what employers do is they say, if I have a black man sitting in front of me at the interview table and I'm not allowed to check their criminal history, chances are they may in fact have a criminal history. Because more than half of all arrests for homicide and robbery are of blacks. So even though I don't know for sure that they're a criminal, I just have to play it safe because I don't want to hire someone who may then commit assault or murder in the workplace, and then we get sued for that. So we'll assume that the black guy who's sitting in front of me as an interviewer is a criminal, and we'll assume the white person is not a criminal. And in fact, this helps white people who are actually ex-felons, because they may be an ex-felon, but if you're not allowed to ask, then you make the assumption that they're not, just to play it safe. So, negligent hiring is what employers fear. Why? Because if they're sued, they're going to lose 70 to 75% of all negligent hiring cases. The average settlement of such a case is $1 million, which can easily be more than what the business is worth. So that would put the business into bankruptcy if they were in that situation. The highest award ever for a negligent hiring case was over $26 million back in 1998 against a Massachusetts home health care firm called Trusted Health Resources. They hired a 6-time felon who committed a double murder in the home that he was entrusted with. And the family of those victims sued the company, won $26.5 million. It put the company into bankruptcy. So this is what employers fear. They do not want to hire someone who might commit a crime in the workplace that results in damages not just for the fact that the employer wants to maximize productivity, but they also want to prevent lawsuits from coming their way, which could kill the business overnight, as what happened with Trusted Health Resources. So when employers have less information about an applicant, they discriminate against minorities according to all the data. And they make assumptions. They do whatever they have to do to play it safe. They don't want to hire a criminal, but they're not allowed to look at the information, so they have to make assumptions. And another example of this happening is when employers are prevented from doing credit checks on potential employees. This hurts black applicants because their rate of hire is being reduced by 7 to 16%, according to one study. Another study shows that when employers have more information, all the studies show that when employers have more information, minorities get helped because they can actually see that the black person who's being interviewed is not a criminal, and therefore they'll be willing to hire them. Another study found that when you are requiring applicants to take drug tests, that blacks are being hired at a rate of 7 to 30% more than if they are not required or not allowed to require a drug test before being hired. So these are the studies, one of them about credit reports, titled Credit Reports as Resumes, the Incidence of Pre-Employment Credit Screening. This was published back in 2016 and 2018. And another study by the National Bureau of Economic Research titled Discrimination and the Effects of Drug Testing on Black Employment, published in 2014. All of these studies are available on the internet for people to check out to see what really happens when you put in place an anti-discrimination law. So here's how you solve this issue. If you want to maximize the opportunities of racial groups that have been discriminated against, you abolish anti-discrimination laws, because what often happens is these politicians, they institute these anti-discrimination laws, but they don't pay attention to the data that comes out after these laws have been put in place. And so for years and decades, they will continue to stand by and support a law that actually increases discrimination, because they have no idea what the facts are. They have no idea what occurred after they implemented their anti-discrimination law. And they just want to stand by something that sounds like a good idea, but ended up producing all the bad results that they were seeking to eliminate. We took discrimination based on criminal history, and we made it discrimination based on race with ban-the-box laws. And that goes on with all kinds of discrimination laws. I talk about in my book, Say No to Big Government, My Case for Maximum Freedom, how the Civil Rights Act of 1964 actually hurts business because it puts business in a situation where they can be accused of discrimination based on race when they're actually discriminating against people based on non-racial factors. I talk about how the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 actually increased discrimination against the disabled because it made the disabled applicant cost more for the business, and as a result, businesses shied away from employing more people with disabilities. It's the government trying to get rid of something bad by outlawing it, but in return getting more of the bad thing that they were looking to eliminate, because they simply incentivize businesses to change the way they hire, to change the way they discriminate, not in a positive way, but in a negative way. And so my book is available on Amazon.com for $18. I talk about the Civil Rights Act, and I talk about anti-discrimination laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws that were made with the best of intentions but ended up producing the worst of results. We need to abolish all these anti-discrimination laws that prevent private employers from discriminating, and by doing so we will actually reduce levels of discrimination in America that are considered unfair, such as racial discrimination. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel Libertarian Black Man, and follow us on Twitter at Libertarian Black Man, and we hope to see you in the next video.